Alexander Reed grabbed the steering wheel from Marcus, shoved open the door before the car fully stopped, and ran. Not walked. Ran. In a $4,000 suit. In a blizzard. Across 4 lanes of Michigan Avenue. Because the woman at the bus stop had just collapsed. Nobody else stopped. Nobody even slowed down. He dropped to his knees in the snow beside a stranger he had never met, and in that moment, the most feared CEO in Chicago forgot every wall he had spent 11 years building around himself. He just didn't know yet that she would be the one to make sure he never rebuilt them. Drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you're new here, subscribe right now. You will not want to miss what happens next. You're fired. Alexander Reed said it the same way he said everything, quietly, without anger, without the performance of it. He set the quarterly report flat on the conference table, face down, like he was closing a book he had already finished. Sir, David Harmon Sr., VP of Acquisitions, 44 years old, 15 years with the company, started to stand. Sit down. Alexander didn't raise his voice. He never raised his voice. Standing up won't change the number. You moved $11 million through a Singapore shell account without board authorization. You did it 3 times. You thought the 3rd time I wouldn't notice because I was distracted by the merger. He picked up his coffee, drank it, set it down. I noticed the 1st time. The room had 12 people in it. Nobody breathed. David. Alexander finally looked at him directly. The severance package is on your desk. Security will walk you out. Do not make this ugly. David Harmon's face had gone the color of old chalk. Alex, we've known each other since Harvard. Alexander nodded, which is why I'm giving you the severance instead of the alternative. A pause. 1 beat. Don't make me reconsider. David left. The room stayed quiet for another 5 seconds. The Singapore timeline moves up 48 hours. Alexander said, reopening his laptop. I want revised projections by 8 a.m. We're done. It was 11:43 p.m. when Marcus pulled the car out of the Reed Capital underground garage and onto Michigan Avenue, and Chicago had turned savage. 15 inches of snow in the forecast. The wind off the lake was doing what Chicago wind always did in January, turning the air into something that didn't feel like weather so much as punishment. The streets that were usually crowded even at midnight had emptied out to almost nothing. A few cabs, a city bus grinding through slush with its lights on. The occasional figure hunched against the cold, moving fast, head down, wanting to be somewhere else. Alexander was in the back seat, laptop open, up. Singapore projections on the left screen board, correspondence on the right. He had a call in 7 hours. He had fired his senior VP 4 hours ago and would need to notify the board before they heard it through other channels. He had a text from his daughter Emma that said, Dad, did you know mantis shrimp can punch with the force of a bullet? That he had not yet answered because he needed to answer it correctly and with genuine enthusiasm, and he wasn't there yet emotionally. He was not looking out the window. He almost never looked out the window. Mr. Reed. Marcus. Quiet, but different. There was something underneath the word that Alexander had learned over 6 years to pay attention to. He looked up. Bus stop, 50 yards ahead. Alexander looked. She was standing under the flickering overhead light of a CTA shelter, except she wasn't really standing anymore. She had one hand on the metal post of the bus sign gripping it. He realized not casually, but the way a person grips something when their legs are deciding whether to keep cooperating. Her other arm was wrapped around herself. She was wearing scrubs, light blue scrubs soaked black with snow. No coat. Her head was down. Her knees were bent inward slightly. He had seen enough medical situations. Emma's childhood, his mother's final years, to recognize the posture of a body that was 3 minutes from the ground. Stop the car, he said. Marcus had already been slowing down. Alexander pushed the door open before the car stopped moving. The cold hit him like stepping into a wall. Immediate total. the kind that punched through his suit jacket and shirt in under 3 seconds and reminded him that Chicago in January was not interested in his net worth or his schedule or the 11 things he still needed to do before he slept. He moved fast, around the front of the car across the sidewalk, 6 steps to the bus shelter, and he got there exactly as her grip on the post started to slide. He caught her. Both hands, one at her back, one at her arm, and she made a sound, not a scream, more like a sharp inhale of someone who had been holding themselves together through pure stubbornness and was furious at the failure of it. She pulled back immediately. Even then, even half collapsed in the snow in the middle of a blizzard, her first instinct was pull back. "Don't," she started. "I've got you," he said. "Not I've got you, don't worry. Not soft, just the facts, just information delivered at the same steady frequency he used for everything because panic was contagious and calm was also contagious, and he had learned which one was useful." She was shaking. Not shivering, shaking. The deep, full-body kind that meant her core temperature had already been falling for a while. Her lips were the color of old bruise. Her face, when she finally looked up at him, was set in the expression of someone who was going to be fine. Damn it! Who had been fine through considerably worse than this? Who did not need, "I'm a nurse," she said. Her voice was steady, impressive given everything. "I know what this looks like. I'm not... What's your name?" He asked it the way he would ask it in a board meeting. Clear, direct, not unkind. She blinked. "What?" "Your name." He was already moving her toward the car, one hand at her back, not gripping, just present. "Tell me your name." "Lily." A pause. "Lily Callahan." "Lily." He said it once, anchoring it. "I'm Alexander Reed. My car is right here. Get in." "I don't know you." "You know my name." He opened the rear door. The warm air from inside the car reached out like something alive, and he felt her body respond to it before her brain could argue a tiny lean toward it, involuntary honest. "Get in, Lily." "I was waiting for the 147, she said, but she was getting in. She was already in, and she was letting him close the door because the alternative was the cold, and her body had voted. He walked around to the other side and got in, and Marcus was already moving the car, already warming faster, the partition already closed. Lily sat with her bag on her lap and her hands pressed between her knees, and she was still shaking, but less. The car's heat was doing its work. He watched her resist it for about 30 seconds. Resist the warmth, resist the softening of it before her body finally overruled her pride, and she exhaled slowly and let her shoulders drop half an inch. "I would have been fine," she said, without looking at him. "No," he said simply. "That's..." She turned to look at him. Dark eyes, direct. Even now, even here, not intimidated. "You can't just..." "You were 45 seconds from the ground," he said. "I'm not saying that to argue. I'm saying it so you understand why I didn't keep driving." A silence. "Why didn't you keep driving?" she asked. And it wasn't hostile. It was a real question. The real question. He looked at her. In the years that followed, when people asked him Emma, mostly later, when she was old enough to ask, he would never have a clean answer for this moment. He was not a sentimental man. He did not stop for strangers. He had built an entire life on the principle that emotion was a liability, that attachment was a variable you controlled, that the only reliable thing in any situation was the data and the decision. But Lily Callahan had been standing in a blizzard in wet scrubs, holding onto a pole and refusing to fall down, and something about that, something about the sheer stubbornness of it, the particular dignity of a person who will not ask for help even when their body is failing them, had hit him somewhere he didn't have a name for anymore. "I don't know," he said, the honest answer, the only one he had. She studied him for a long moment. The same way he would later realize she studied everything. Patience charts situations looking for the thing underneath the surface, the thing that told you what was actually happening. Lily Callahan, she said again, like she was just making sure he had it. Like it was a receipt. Alexander Reed, he said. Like it was one in return. Marcus's voice came through the speaker. Mr. Reed, where are we going? Alexander looked at Lily. She was still shaking slightly, but her eyes were clear. She was present. She was here. Ma'am, Marcus said, your address. She gave a street on the north side. Alexander knew it. 45 minutes in this storm. The roads were already being closed. Marcus had a wife and 2 kids in Evanston who were waiting for him. My apartment is 9 minutes from here, Alexander said. Guest suite, lock on the door. She turned to look at him. No, she said. The storm. I said no. Clear, flat, final. He nodded, looked at his phone. Pulled up the city emergency bulletin that had gone out 30 minutes ago. Turned the screen toward her without speaking. All non-essential travel suspended. Lakeshore Drive closed. Northside routes restricted. She read it. He watched her read it. He watched her jaw tighten. She looked at Marcus in the mirror. Is it bad? Yes, ma'am, Marcus said. Gentle, honest. My family is north too. If I drive you up there, don't. She held up one hand. Closed her eyes for 2 seconds. She was doing math. He could see it calculating options, finding the exits, running the variables. The same thing he did. Just faster in her case, because she was used to doing it under pressure. She opened her eyes. The guest suite, she said. It has a lock. Yes. You won't? She stopped, started again. This is just a place to sleep. Yes. I'm leaving before 7. Fine. She looked at him one more time. Something in the look, not trust, not yet, not even close, but the decision to act in the absence of trust, because the alternative was worse. Okay, she said. He turned back to his laptop. Marcus, he said. Take us home. The apartment was on the 42nd floor, and it was enormous in the way that money makes spaces enormous, not just large, but empty, the particular silence of a place where one person moves through too many rooms. The windows ran floor to ceiling on 2 sides, and the city below was a smear of white and gold. The snow still coming down in heavy curtains, the streets below already ghosted over. Lily stepped out of the elevator and stopped. He watched her take it in. He always watched people take it in. The art, the kitchen, the open space. The view that had cost him enough that he remembered the exact number without trying. Most people looked at it with hunger or awe, or the specific glassy expression of people calculating what everything cost. Lily looked at it the way she had looked at him in the car, trying to find the thing underneath. Guest suite is down the hall, he said. First door on the left. There are clothes in the closet, my sister Claire's. She's a teacher in Portland. She visits when she remembers I exist. He moved to the kitchen. Roughly your size. Lily didn't move yet. You have a sister. Younger, by 4 years. She thinks I work too much. Does she? He opened the refrigerator. She's right. He pulled out what he needed. Are you hungry? No. A beat. She set her bag down. Finally set it down. Yes, I haven't eaten since noon. Sit down. You don't have to. I know. He was already moving. Sit. She sat at the kitchen island, and she watched him, and she didn't say anything, and he didn't say anything, and he made ramen. Emma's ramen, the recipe his daughter had made him learn, because she said a dad who couldn't feed his kid had no business running a company broth egg scallion chicken, the specific configuration that meant someone is home and someone is safe. He set it in front of her. She looked at the bowl, then at him. You cooked, she said. It's ramen. She stopped. I know what I am, he said, not unkindly. I can still make ramen. She ate. He stood across the kitchen island with a glass of water and his phone, and he did not hover, did not talk, did not fill the space with noise, the way people did when silence made them uncomfortable. He had learned long ago that silence was a form of respect. Emma had taught him that. Emma, who went quiet when she was thinking and needed the people around her to understand the difference between quiet and gone. After a few minutes, Lily looked up. "How old is your daughter?" she asked. 12. He looked up from his phone. "She currently believes that the mantis shrimp may be the most important animal on the planet. She sent me a 17-minute documentary this afternoon and is waiting for my thoughts." Something moved in Lily's face. Warm, quick, gone almost before it arrived. "She sounds like a handful." "She's the only thing in my life I got completely right," he said. Lily was quiet after that. She finished the ramen. Set the chopsticks down in the bowl with the precision of someone who had been taught that you put things back the way you found them. She folded her hands on the island. "Why does a man with all of this," she said, gesturing once, just once, the whole apartment, the view, "everything stop for a nurse he doesn't know at midnight in a blizzard?" Alexander set his phone face down on the counter. He had been a CEO for 11 years. He had sat in rooms where the wrong answer cost tens of millions of dollars. He had faced lawyers and boards and hostile takeovers, and a divorce that had made his attorney physically age in real time. He knew how to manage a question. He knew how to redirect, reframe, answer the question next to the question. He didn't do any of that. "My mother," he said. "She worked nights. Took the bus home. One January years ago, her bus was suspended for weather, and nobody told her. She walked 6 blocks in the snow because she didn't want to ask anyone for help." He picked up his water glass. Didn't drink, just held it. "She got pneumonia. Spent 10 days in the hospital." A pause. "I was 12. I sat next to her bed and held her hand and made myself a promise." Lily was very still. "What promise?" she asked, softly. "That I would never drive past someone standing in the cold." He set the glass down. "I don't usually have to think about it. It doesn't usually come up." He looked at her directly. Tonight it came up. The apartment was quiet. 42 floors up, the wind threw itself against the glass and didn't get in. Lily looked at him for a long time. "I had a patient today," she said, slowly, like she was deciding whether to say it as she was saying it. 71 years old. Came in alone. No emergency contact on file. Waited 4 hours in the ER before anyone... She stopped. Looked at the counter. "I sat with him. After my shift should have ended, just so he wasn't alone." She was quiet. "My supervisor asked me why I stayed late. I said because somebody had to." Alexander said nothing. "I'm always the one who stays," she said. And it wasn't a complaint. It was a fact, the same way she had stated that 3 nurses had called in sick, just the plain landscape of her life. "I know the feeling," he said. She looked at him like she didn't expect that answer. Like she had braced for something else, admiration maybe, or worse, pity. What she got was recognition. She picked up her bag from the floor, stood. "I'm going to shower," she said, "and sleep." She looked at him. "Thank you. For stopping. For the food." A pause. "For not making me ask." He nodded. She walked down the hall. First door on the left. He heard it close. He heard after a moment the lock. He stood in his kitchen, in the silence of his enormous apartment, and he didn't pick up his phone, and he didn't open his laptop, and he didn't do any of the 11 things he still needed to do before he slept. He looked at the ramen bowl she'd left. He washed it. At 2 a.m., he was in the chair by the window, the city below him white and still, when he heard her door open. Footsteps in the hall. Stopping at the edge of the room. "You're still up," she said. Not a question. "I don't sleep much." She came and stood near the window. She was wearing his sister's clothes' gray sweats and a faded Northwestern sweatshirt, and she was holding her own elbows loosely. Not the rigid brace from earlier, just the natural posture of someone who was tired but couldn't get there. "Strange place," she said. "I keep waiting to hear my pager." "You push yourself too hard," he said. He didn't mean it as criticism. It came out as something close to concern, and he heard it in his own voice and kept his face very still. She heard it too. He could tell. "Says the man answering emails at 2 in the morning, she said, dry, the first real humor she had let out all night. He almost smiled. Almost. "Touché," he said. She looked at the city. He looked at the city. The snow had finally slowed. Chicago below them was buried and quiet and briefly improbably beautiful the way dangerous things sometimes were. "I don't usually do this," she said. "Accept help. Accept anything," she said, simply, honestly. "I'm better at giving it." "I know," he said. And he did. He had known it from the moment she'd said, "I'm fine with blue lips and a dead phone in the middle of a blizzard." She turned and looked at him. "Are you always this?" she started, stopped, choosing the word carefully. "What?" "Certain," she said. "Of everything. Every word, every decision. Like nothing surprises you." He was quiet for a moment. "Things surprise me," he said. "I've just learned not to let the surprise get ahead of the response." She studied him, that look again, the underneath look. "Something surprised you tonight," she said. "Didn't it?" It wasn't a question. He looked back out at the city. "Go to sleep, Lily," he said, quietly. She went, and Alexander Reed sat in the dark for a long time afterward in his enormous, silent, perfectly ordered apartment, and felt for the first time in 11 years that the silence was slightly different than it had been this morning. Not smaller, just less absolute. She was gone at 6:22 a.m. He knew the exact time because his phone logged the elevator call from the 42nd floor. She had made the guest bed not perfectly, but carefully, folded the towels, returned the glass to the kitchen. On the counter next to the ramen pot, she had left a post-it note. 4 words. "Thank you. Lily C." He stood there in the early light and read it twice. Then he folded it, put it in the pocket of his shirt against his chest without thinking about why. Picked up his phone, opened Emma's text about the mantis shrimp. Typed, "I read about them. You're right. Tell me more." Set the phone down. Poured his coffee. The apartment was the same as it always was. Quiet. Ordered. Everything in its place. Except something in it was different now, and he couldn't put his finger on the exact location of the difference, couldn't chart it, couldn't quantify it, couldn't put it in a report for a board that was nervous about Singapore. He just stood at the window with his coffee and looked at the city buried in white. And he thought about a woman who stayed late, so a 71-year-old man wouldn't be alone, who gripped a bus stop pole rather than fall down in public, who said thank you for not making me ask like it was the truest thing anyone could offer another person. He thought about that for a while. Then he thought about it a little more. He saw her again on a Tuesday. He wasn't looking for her. That was the thing he told himself later when it mattered that he wasn't looking. He had a lunch with his attorney at a restaurant on Erie Street, a place with good steaks and bad acoustics, and the kind of lighting that made everyone look slightly more powerful than they were. He arrived 4 minutes early because he always arrived 4 minutes early. He was standing at the bar waiting for a table when he heard her voice. Not to him. She wasn't talking to him. She was 2 bar stools down back to him talking to someone on her phone. And he recognized her voice before he recognized anything else, that specific steadiness, the even frequency of it, the way she delivered information like it was the only thing that mattered. "I understand that Dr. Petrov, but Mr. Hannigan's potassium level was flagged at 5:08 this morning, and I have not received a call back. I'm not asking for a full consult. I'm asking for a return call. Today. A pause. She was listening, and he could tell from the set of her shoulders that she didn't like what she was hearing. Okay, then I'll escalate. Another pause. I'm not threatening anything. I'm telling you what happens next. Thank you. She hung up. Then, she put her phone face down on the bar and pressed both hands flat against the counter for exactly 3 seconds, the way a person does when they are deciding not to say out loud what they are thinking. That bad, said the woman next to her, a friend clearly from the easy familiarity between them. Someone in business clothes who had been watching Lily's phone call with the expression of a person watching someone defuse a bomb. He's been doing this for 2 months, Lily said. Doesn't call back, doesn't follow up, and then if something happens to a patient, it's... She stopped. It's fine, I'll escalate. I know the process. Lily, you've been at that hospital for 6 years. At some point... Don't, Lily said. Not angry, just tired. Please don't give me the speech about advocating for myself. Not today. Alexander should have looked away. He should have turned back to the bar and waited for his attorney and let the coincidence be what it was. A city of 2.5 million people, occasionally delivering the same 2 people to the same block. Instead, he said, same patient or a different one. She turned. He watched the exact sequence of it, surprise first, then the quick recalibration, then the look she gave him that said she was deciding in real time how to respond to the fact that he existed in this room. Different one, she said. How long were you standing there? Long enough. He extended his hand to the woman next to her. Alexander Reed. I gave your friend a ride in the blizzard last week. The woman whose name turned out to be Dana, a hospital administrator at Northwestern, who had known Lily since nursing school, shook his hand with the particular alertness of a person filing information away at high speed. She mentioned it, Dana said, which was interesting because Lily's expression suggested she had not expected Dana to say that. You mentioned it. Alexander looked at Lily. I mentioned a stranger stopped in the snow, Lily said, evenly. It was notable. January in Chicago, people don't stop. And yet, Dana said. Lily picked up her drink. Don't. I'm not doing anything. You're doing the face. I don't have a face. You have a very specific face. Alexander said, I don't want to interrupt. You're not interrupting. Dana said immediately at the exact same moment Lily said, You're fine. They looked at each other. Dana smiled into her glass. His attorney arrived. He excused himself. He had lunch. He had a conversation about the Singapore acquisition and the legal structure of a subsidiary he was considering, and the ongoing headache of David Harmon's severance negotiation, because fired people always became complicated after the fact. He was present for all of it. He was also, in a way he did not examine too closely, aware of the exact moment Lily and Dana left the sound of stools moving, a laugh, brief and genuine. The kind of laugh that meant something that was heavy. A few minutes ago, had been made slightly lighter. He didn't turn around. He heard the door. His attorney, Marcus Webb, who had known him for 9 years and had the observational skills that came from a career in corporate law, waited until the door had been closed for a full 10 seconds before he said, Someone you know. Not really, Alexander said. Marcus looked at him the way he looked at contracts, with unusual language. Interesting, he said, and moved on. The third time was not an accident. He had her number because she had given it to him that night, not willingly exactly, but practically because he had insisted that if she was going to leave before he woke up, she needed a way to contact him if the streets were still impassable, and she had typed it into his phone with the no-nonsense efficiency of someone completing a required form. He had not used it for 12 days. He used it on a Wednesday afternoon at 4:17 p.m., standing at his office window, looking at the lake, which had the flat gray surface of hammered pewter in February. He typed, Emma has decided the mantis shrimp is the greatest living argument for the existence of a higher power. I thought you should know. He stared at it for 5 seconds. Sent it. He put his phone face down on his desk and opened the Singapore file. 7 minutes later, his phone lit up. That tracks. Mantis shrimp can see 16 types of color receptors. Humans have 3. They've been evolutionarily humiliating us for 400 million years. He read it twice. Does your daughter know they're also extremely aggressive and will absolutely attack their own reflection? He typed back. She knows. She finds it aspirational. A pause. Then I like her already. He set the phone down, picked it up again. How's Mr. Hannigan's potassium? Longer pause this time. You remember that? I was standing 2 feet away, 5.4 this morning. Better. Dr. Petrov finally called back. A beat. Eventually. Good? He typed. Then because it was true, you didn't let it go. I never let it go, she wrote back. It's my worst quality. I'd argue otherwise. He sent it before he decided whether to. There was a longer pause. Long enough that he thought he'd miscalculated, pushed at something that wasn't ready to be pushed, and she was going to go quiet in the way that meant, that's enough of that. Then, thank you. For checking in. Just that. But the way she phrased it, not thanks for the text, but thank you for checking in. Said that nobody had been checking in very much, and that she noticed the difference. He didn't respond after that. He went back to Singapore. But the weight of the afternoon felt different in a way that had nothing to do with acquisition structures or board liability, and he didn't try to work out why. They met for coffee on a Saturday, which was not a date they were both clear on. This though neither of them said so out loud, which was perhaps itself a kind of statement. She suggested a place near the hospital where she worked, a narrow coffee shop that had been there since the 90s, and smelled like roasted beans and old wood and something that might have been cinnamon. He arrived in the kind of clothes he wore when he wasn't performing CEO dark jeans, a gray wool sweater, his watch removed because he always removed his watch when he was somewhere he wanted to stay. She was already there when he arrived, which surprised him. He had expected her to be late. She had told him she was working a half shift that morning and might be delayed. She wasn't delayed. She was sitting at a corner table with a coffee already in front of her, and she had saved him a seat. That was the detail he held on to. Not the coffee. The saved seat. You're early, he said. I'm always early, she said. I have to be. If I'm not 15 minutes ahead of everything, I'm already behind. He sat. Ordered an Americano from the person who appeared immediately. Lily already had coffee in front of her. She was wearing her own clothes today. Not scrubs, not borrowed sweats, and there was something slightly different about her. Less armored. Not unguarded, but the fortress walls were set back a few steps from the perimeter. How's Emma? She asked, currently in a fight with her science teacher about whether a paper on mantis shrimp visual systems qualifies for an extra credit assignment. Who's winning? Emma, probably. She has sources. He wrapped both hands around his cup. How's your week? Long. She said it without complaint, just fact. We had a patient come in Tuesday. 48 years old, heart attack, first time in a hospital since he was born. He kept apologizing. To everyone. Every nurse who walked into his room, he said, I'm sorry to be a bother. Like having a heart attack was an inconvenience he'd inflicted on the staff. Alexander was quiet. I sat with him for 20 minutes after my rounds, she said. Just talked. He's a contractor, builds houses, has 4 kids, the youngest is 7. She turned her coffee cup. He told me nobody had ever taken 20 minutes for him before. Medical system. She looked up. That's not extraordinary for me. It's just Tuesday. You can't do that forever, he said. Not a criticism, a concern. She looked at him sharply. Do what? Give everything, he said, and not leave anything. She was quiet for a moment. Her jaw did that thing, the subtle tightening that meant she was deciding whether to agree or fight. I know the difference between giving and depleting, she said. Do you? Why does everyone? She stopped, took a breath. Dana says the same thing. Dana seems smart. Dana is very smart and very annoying, but she said it with affection. He looked at her. When did you last take a full day off? I don't. She frowned slightly. I took a Sunday in December. It's February. I know what month it is. Lily. Don't. She said it the same way she'd said it to Dana, not angry, just a closed door. I don't need a lecture from someone who has 3 monitors open at all times and texts his driver at 11 p.m. Fair, he said immediately. That threw her slightly. He could see it. She had been braced for pushback for him to hold his ground, and he'd moved instead. Fair, she repeated. You're right, he said. I'm the last person who should talk about leaving something for yourself. I haven't taken a full day off since Emma's birthday in September. He drank his coffee. We're both bad at this. Something shifted in her expression. The door didn't open exactly, but a light came on in one of the windows. What would you do? She asked. If you took a day. He thought about it genuinely. I'd take Emma somewhere. The aquarium, probably. She wants to see the beluga whales. I've been saying we'd go for 3 months. Why haven't you? Because there's always a reason not to. Because the company doesn't stop needing things just because I've decided to take a Saturday. He set his cup down. Because it's easier to keep moving than to stop and be aware of what you're missing. She looked at him for a long moment. Yeah, she said quietly. I know that feeling. He looked back at her. This was the thing about Lily Callahan. She kept giving him moments like this one. Small, exact moments where the person underneath the posture made brief contact with the person underneath his. Not intimate, not performed. Just 2 people who had both gotten very good at motion, letting the motion stop for a few seconds. He didn't know what to do with it. He hadn't known what to do with it for 11 years, which was approximately when he'd stopped trying. Emma would like you, he said. Lily looked slightly startled. You think so? She likes people who say what they mean. He picked up his cup. There aren't that many of them. She was quiet. She looked at her coffee. I don't, she started. I'm not in a position to. She stopped again. Tried again. I work 60 hours a week and I live in a studio apartment and my life is not. She gestured. It's not this. A pause. Whatever this is. This is coffee, he said, simply. I know that. Then drink your coffee. She looked at him. Something quick and surprised and almost laughing moved across her face. Not the full thing, just the edge of it. She drank her coffee. March arrived and the city started to remember it knew how to be something other than brutal. The snow retreated from the sidewalks. The lake lost its iron color and went blue again. People came back outside blinking like they'd been somewhere else and were just now returning. Alexander and Lily built something between them, not deliberately, not with any stated intention or acknowledged direction. They built it the way structures are sometimes built by people who won't admit they're constructing anything incrementally out of the repeated choice to show up. Coffee became a standing thing. Saturday mornings, the same narrow shop, the corner table. He always got there second, and she always had his seat. They talked about Emma, and about patience, and about the Singapore acquisition that was making his board nervous, and about a medical policy bill moving through the state legislature that Lily had written to her representative about in a detailed 4-page letter that she mentioned only because he asked what she was reading when he arrived one morning and found her annotating a printed document with a blue pen. You wrote to your state rep, he said, reading the header. Don't sound surprised. I'm not surprised. He looked at her. You wrote 4 pages. The bill is wrong, she said. If it passes, hospitals lose flexibility on staffing ratios. That affects patients directly. Someone has to explain that to people who don't work in hospitals. Did you get a response? A form letter, she said. Which is why I'm annotating it. I'm going to write back. He looked at her across the table. At the pen in her hand. At the focused, unhurried certainty in her expression The expression of a person who has decided that the way things are is not the way things have to stay and is prepared to do the patient, unglamorous work of saying so. I know 2 state senators, he said, and a policy director on the health committee. She looked up. I don't want to use your connections. You want the bill to be revised. Yes, but... Then use every tool available. He leaned back. That's what they're for. That's very easy to say from your position. Yes, he said. It is. That's also how it works. She held his gaze. The frustration in her face was real. She didn't like the inequity of it, the way access moved for some people and barricaded for others. He understood that. He didn't disagree with it. He also knew that sitting with the frustration didn't change the bill. Send me the letter, he said. I'll read it. If it says what you want it to say, I'll get it to the right desk. She was quiet for a moment. I don't want to owe you anything, she said, direct, clear. He respected it. You're not owing me anything, he said. You're letting me be useful. There's a difference. She looked at him for a long time. Okay, she said. The same word she'd said in the car in the blizzard. The word she said when she decided to trust a situation she couldn't fully calculate. He was starting to recognize the weight of it, the way it cost her something every time, and the way she paid it anyway. Okay, she said again. Softer. He nodded, reached for his coffee. She went back to her annotating. They sat like that for another 40 minutes, mostly in silence, and it was the most comfortable 40 minutes he had spent in longer than he could accurately name. The call came on a Thursday afternoon in late March. He was in the middle of a board call live, not recorded, with 7 people on the line, and a disagreement about risk exposure in the Singapore structure that had been running for 45 minutes when his personal phone lit up with a number he didn't immediately recognize. He would have ignored it. He always ignored unknown numbers during board calls. Except something instinct, the particular frequency of a Thursday at 3 p.m. made him glance at it. And the number had a hospital exchange. He was on his feet before he knew he'd decided to stand. Hold the call, he said to the room. The room went silent. Alexander Reed had never in 11 years said, hold the call in the middle of a live board session. His assistant, who had been sitting at the far end of the table taking notes, looked up. He stepped out of the conference room into the hallway and answered. This is Reed. Mr. Reed, this is Dana Reyes. I'm calling about Lily Callahan. You're listed as her emergency contact. The hallway was very quiet. I'm not her emergency contact, he said carefully. You're in her phone as... A pause. Papers. A. Reed. You're the first contact listed. He had no memory of this. He thought about her phone the night she'd charged it in the guest room, the dead phone she'd shoved back in her bag at the bus stop. Had she added him when why? What happened? He said. His voice came out completely flat, which was what his voice did when the situation exceeded the register of controlled response. She collapsed on the floor of the ICU about 30 minutes ago. She's stable. She's conscious. She's being evaluated. But it's exhaustion and dehydration, and her blood pressure dropped, and they want to keep her for observation. Dana's voice was tight. She won't call anyone. She told the attending physician she was fine, and she'd take a cab home, and he told her she wasn't going anywhere, and she's... A breath. She's fighting with everyone in the room. Mr. Reed, and I'm standing in the hallway because someone needs to come, and she won't let me call her mother. He was already walking back toward the conference room. He opened the door. Reschedule, he said to the table. We're done for today. 7 faces looked at him. He was already getting his coat. She was sitting up in the hospital bed when he got there, which he took as a good sign, and also as a warning. A Lily Callahan flat on her back, too weak to argue, would have scared him considerably more than the one he found sitting ramrod straight against the pillows, with an expression that suggested she was reconsidering every life decision that had led to this particular moment. There was an IV in her arm. She was still in her scrubs. She had not let them change her into a hospital gown, which he gathered from the look of the nurse near the door, who appeared to have lost that argument recently and comprehensively. He walked in. She looked at him. He looked at her. "I told Dana not to call anyone," she said immediately. "She called anyway," he said. He pulled the chair next to her bed and sat down. "How do you feel?" "I'm fine." "You were on the floor of the ICU." "I didn't eat breakfast." She said it defensively. "And I've been working double shifts all week because we're still short-staffed and I—" She stopped. Something moved across her face. "I'm fine." "Lily, don't do that." "Do what?" "That." She gestured at him. "That quiet thing. Where you just say my name and wait. Does it bother you?" "Yes. A beat. Because it works." He looked at her. She looked back at him, and for a moment the room was very quiet, except for the steady sound of the monitors she was attached to. "I pushed too hard," she said. Finally, quietly, just the plain acknowledgement of it, no defense, no performance. "I know I pushed too hard. I know what my limits are. I just—" She looked down at her hands. "I know what happens when nobody picks up the slack. I've seen what happens." "And you'd rather run yourself into the floor than let it happen," he said. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the food he'd stopped for on the way, a sandwich from the place 2 blocks from the hospital, a bottle of water and orange. He set them on the tray beside her. She looked at them, then at him. "You stopped," she said. "You haven't eaten." "You stopped." She stopped. He watched her face do something complex and compressed something she controlled very quickly, but not quite quickly enough. Her eyes were bright for a moment. Just a moment. Then they weren't. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was steady. "Eat the sandwich," he said. She ate the sandwich. He sat next to her bed, and he didn't say anything else. And she didn't say anything else. And after a few minutes, she leaned back slightly against the pillows. Not a collapse, just a small surrender to the fact that she was allowed to lean, and the monitors continued their steady rhythm, and the light in the room was the particular pale light of a hospital in the late afternoon, and he sat with his jacket across his lap, and did not check his phone, and did not think about Singapore, and did not go anywhere. At some point, she looked at him. "You stayed," she said, like it was something she was still calculating, like the data didn't match the model she had built. "I'm going to keep staying," he said, simply, steadily, the way he said things when he had decided they were true. She looked at him for a long time. She didn't say anything after that. She closed her eyes. And in the slow, unguarded way of a person who is too exhausted for the usual defenses, she slept. He stayed. She didn't talk about the hospital collapse. Not directly. Not in the way that would have required her to sit with the vulnerability of it and let someone else see the full shape of what had happened. What she did instead was what Lily Callahan always did with things that were too large to hold at arm's length. She kept moving. She took 2 days off because the attending physician had made it a condition of her discharge, and she respected medical authority even when she was the patient. She answered Dana's texts. She ate actual meals. She slept 8 hours both nights, which she mentioned to Alexander in a text on the second day, with the tone of someone reporting a minor administrative accomplishment rather than a symptom of how depleted she had been. Slept 8 hours. Twice. Don't make a thing of it. He texted back. Noted. Not making a thing of it. Then, after a moment, good. She returned to work on a Thursday. He knew because she texted him when she got home that evening. Not a long text. Just, back. All patients still alive, including me. He sent back a single period because he had learned in the months since January that Lily received brevity as respect. She didn't want to be managed. She didn't want to be worried over. What she wanted, what she responded to, was being taken seriously. So he took her seriously. The Saturday coffee continued. March became April. The corner table became theirs in the way that things become yours in a city, not through declaration, but through repetition, through the quiet accumulation of mornings that all pointed in the same direction. Emma asked about her once in the specific way that 12-year-olds ask about things not directly but through a doorway they've left deliberately open. "Dad?" Emma said one Sunday evening she was at his apartment for her week, sitting across from him at the dinner table with her tablet open beside her plate, a position he had long ago stopped fighting because Emma's brain processed information the way other people breathed constantly in multiple streams. "Dana said you were at the hospital for someone last month." He looked up. "How do you know Dana?" "She's the administrator at Northwestern, right? Her daughter is in my grade." Emma picked up her fork. "She said you came to the hospital for someone who wasn't a business thing." He had a brief moment of appreciation for the information networks of 12-year-olds, which were both more efficient and less filtered than anything his communications team ran. "A friend," he said. Emma looked at him. She had her mother's eyes very dark, very direct, missing nothing. "You don't really have friends, Dad." "Thank you, Emma. I mean..." She almost looked apologetic. "Almost. I mean you have people, like Marcus and the Singapore people and Mr. Webb, but not..." She considered it. "Not someone you'd go to a hospital for." "I went to a hospital for Grandma." "That's different." She stabbed a piece of broccoli. "Is she nice?" "She's a nurse," he said. "She works very hard, and she says what she means." Emma processed this. "Does she know about me?" "She knows you believe the mantis shrimp is evolutionarily superior." Emma's face did the thing it did when she was pleased, but was not going to perform being pleased. "Good," she said. And then she went back to her tablet, and the conversation was technically over. But Alexander sat with the weight of it. "You don't really have friends, Dad, in the particular way that the truest things said by the people who love you always land." He introduced them in April. It was not planned. He was meeting Lily for coffee on a Saturday, the regular time, the regular place. And Emma was with him that weekend, and Emma had requested to come to the coffee shop because she had a book she was reading, and sometimes she liked to read in places that were not the apartment. And he had learned not to argue with the logic of 12-year-olds. He had not thought it through, which was unusual for him. Lily was already at the corner table when they walked in. She looked up. She saw Alexander first, and the easy recognition moved across her face, the slight shift that she didn't control anymore, that had started maybe 6 weeks ago, where seeing him registered as something welcome, before she had a chance to decide on the expression. Then she saw Emma. And Emma saw her. Emma stopped walking. She looked at Lily. Then she looked at her father. Then back at Lily, with the expression of a scientist encountering data that confirmed a hypothesis. "Hi," Emma said. Very directly. "You're the nurse." Lily glanced at Alexander, who gave her a look that meant he had not fully prepared for this moment. "I am," Lily said. "You're Emma. Dad said you know about the mantis shrimp." "I do," Lily said. "I also know that they're capable of delivering a strike with enough force to break aquarium glass, which I find either terrifying or deeply admirable depending on the day." Emma sat down. Just like that, pulled out a chair at the table and sat down with the unilateral confidence of a person who has decided where they belong. She put her book face down on the table and looked at Lily with the complete measuring attention she usually reserved for documentary subjects. "Which is it today?" Emma asked. Lily considered it. "Admirable," she said. "It's been a long week." "Dad has long weeks too," Emma said. "He doesn't break aquarium glass about it, though." "Maybe he should," Lily said. Emma's face moved. Something quick and genuine, the beginning of a real smile, the one she didn't show people until she had decided they had earned it. Alexander ordered coffee and sat and watched the two of them, and it was one of the strangest and most disorienting experiences he had had in recent memory. Watching the two people in his life, who most consistently said exactly what they thought, find each other, and immediately, without ceremony, begin to do exactly that. They talked about mantis shrimp for 10 minutes. Then, Emma asked Lily about the worst patient she'd ever had, which Lily handled with careful professionalism. She didn't share identifying details, but she told the story of a man who had refused every treatment sent away, every nurse, and then one afternoon had asked Lily very quietly if she would read to him because he couldn't hold the book anymore and he didn't want to ask his family. "What did you read?" Emma asked. "He wanted the sports page," Lily said, "so I read him box scores for 45 minutes. Emma thought about this. "Did he get better?" "He went home 2 weeks later," Lily said. "Because of the box scores. Because of feeling like someone was paying attention," Lily said. "The box scores were just the vehicle." Emma turned and looked at her father. He could read exactly what the look said. It said, "I see why you go to the hospital for her." He looked at his coffee. Later, when Emma had gone to the counter to look at the pastry case with the focused attention of a person making an important decision, Lily turned to him. "You could have warned me," she said. "I know. I'm sorry." "She's extraordinary," Lily said, quietly, meaning it completely. "Yes," he said. "She has your—" Lily paused, choosing. "She has your way of just looking at a thing until she understands it." He didn't say anything. "That's a compliment," Lily said. "I know." He looked at her. "Thank you." She turned her coffee cup. He had learned to read this. The cup turning was what she did when she was holding something she hadn't decided whether to say. "You're a good father," she said. The way she said it suggested she had considered not saying it and then decided it was true enough to be worth saying. "I'm trying to be," he said. "That's not what I see," she said. "What I see is—" She stopped. "She looks at you, and she's not afraid of you. Kids who are raised by people who are only trying are a little afraid. She's not afraid." He held that for a moment. The fullness of it. The weight. "My father was a man people were afraid of," he said. He didn't say this often. He said it now because the conversation had earned it. He wasn't violent. He was just absent, in a room full of people, and everyone arranged themselves around the absence, including me. Lily looked at him. "I decided a long time ago," he said, "that Emma would never have to arrange herself around me." The table was quiet. "She doesn't," Lily said, simply, clearly. Emma came back with a croissant and the information that there was a new item on the menu that she believed was attempting to pass itself off as a macaron, but was structurally not meeting the threshold, and did either of them want to hear her case? They both said yes. It was in May that the thing he had been not examining started to make itself impossible to ignore. It happened gradually, and then suddenly, the way things do. The gradual part was months of coffee and texts and a hospital visit and Emma reading to Lily from her mantis shrimp documentary on a Saturday afternoon because Lily had admitted she hadn't seen it, and Emma had found this personally correctable. The sudden part was a Tuesday evening in May when Lily called him, not texted, called at 9 p.m., and he answered on the first ring because he always answered her first ring now, which was something he had not thought about until the moment he realized he was doing it. "Hey," she said. Her voice was different, not the steadiness. Something underneath the steadiness that was having a hard time staying under. "What happened?" he said. A pause. "Mr. Hannigan died." He remembered the name immediately. Potassium 5.8. The patient she had fought for in February in the coffee shop on Erie Street, the phone call he had watched her make with her 2 hands flat on the bar counter. "I'm sorry," he said. "It wasn't—" Her voice tightened. "It wasn't unexpected. He'd been declining for 2 months. I knew. I've done this long enough to know." A breath. She stopped. "You just needed to say it to someone," he said. A longer pause. "Yes," she said, very quietly. "Tell me about him," Alexander said. He moved to the window. The lake was dark below him, the city lit up around it. "Tell me who he was." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "He was 63. retired postal worker. He had a garden in his backyard that he told me about every time I came into his room. What was coming up, what was failing, what he was going to do differently next season. A pause. He kept saying next season until about 3 weeks ago. A breath. His wife brought me tomatoes from the garden last fall, from before he got sick. She left them at the nurse's station with a note that said, "For the one who listens." Alexander said nothing. He just let it exist. He asked me once, Lily said, why I became a nurse, and I told him the real reason, not the professional answer. I told him about my dad, about... She stopped. He had not heard about her father before. He filed it carefully. He told me I had the right equipment for it. That's what he said, the right equipment. A sound that was almost a laugh, almost something else. 63 years old, and he made me feel like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "You are," Alexander said. "Don't," she said. "I'm not performing anything," he said. "I've watched you for 4 months. You are exactly where you're supposed to be." He was right. Silence. "I should go," she said. "I just needed to..." "Lily." "What?" "You can stay on the phone," he said. "You don't have to go." Another pause. Longer. "Okay," she said. So she stayed on the phone. He didn't try to fix anything. She didn't try to say anything profound. He stood at his window, and she was wherever she was. Her apartment he assumed the studio she never described in any detail, and they were just present in the same silence for a while, the way two people can be when the conversation has already done what it needed to do. After about 10 minutes, she said, "You should sleep." "So should you." "I will." A pause. "Alexander?" "Yeah." "Thank you." A beat. "For..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "Good night, Lily," he said. "Good night." He stood at the window for a long time after she hung up. The city moved below him the way it always did, indifferent, continuous, enormous. He had stood at this window through board crises and a divorce, and his mother's death, and the particular lonely architecture of a man who has made himself very successful, and in doing so, has made himself very alone. He had never stood there feeling the way he felt right now. He identified it slowly, carefully. The way you approach something in the dark that you don't want to startle. He was in love with her. He stood very still with this information. He had not been in love with anyone since Catherine, since before the divorce. Since before the company was what it was, since a version of himself he barely recognized anymore. He had not thought himself capable of it anymore, honestly, in the way that a person who has been injured in the same place too many times eventually stops trusting that part of their body. And here it was. Quiet, certain, completely inconvenient. He thought about what it meant. He thought about Emma, who was 12 and had been through a divorce and deserved stability. He thought about what he was, what his company was, what his schedule demanded, what his last marriage had failed from. He thought about Lily, who was already giving everything she had to 70-hour weeks, and patients who needed her, and a system that took more than it returned. He thought about all of it. Then he picked up his phone and opened her contact and looked at it for a moment. And then he put his phone face down, because the thinking he needed to do was not the kind that happened on a phone. It was the kind that happened in the middle of the night, alone in an apartment that was too large for one person, with the city below going on about its business. He got it wrong. That was the honest accounting of what happened next, and Alexander Reed, who valued honest accounting above almost everything else, knew it, even while it was happening. He got careful. Not cold. He didn't go cold. He was never cold with her, but careful. The specific kind of careful that a man does when he knows something true about himself and is afraid of what acting on it will cost. He still showed up for coffee. He still texted. He was still present in all the ways he had been present. But there was a wall up, or more accurately, the wall that had always been there had been moved half a step forward, back into place, and if you were paying close attention, you could see the difference. Lily was paying close attention. She noticed in the third week of May. He could tell she noticed, because she got quieter, in the specific way she got quiet when she was processing something she didn't have enough data to name yet. She was never hostile about it. She never said you're different or what happened, or made it a confrontation. That wasn't Lily. Lily was patient in the way of someone who has spent years reading patience, gathering information, withholding conclusion, waiting for the thing that confirmed or denied. He was aware of it. He didn't address it, which was its own kind of answer. The conversation that broke things open happened on a Saturday in early June at the corner table in the coffee shop that had become theirs. Emma was not there. It was just the two of them, and the coffee, and the accumulated weight of 6 months of proximity, and the wall he had quietly rebuilt. She let him order his coffee. She let him settle. She turned her cup 3 times. Then she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." He looked at her. "Okay." "What are we doing?" she said. Steady, clear, direct, not angry. Just asking with the precision of someone who is done gathering information and is ready for the conclusion. He held her gaze. "We're having coffee." "Alexander." "I know what you're asking." "Then answer it." He set his cup down. He thought about Singapore, which was easier to think about than this. He thought about a board that was finally satisfied with the acquisition structure. He thought about the 17 things he controlled, with a competence that had made him one of the most successful men in his industry. He thought about Lily calling him at 9 p.m. because she needed to say Mr. Hannigan's name to someone. "I don't know how to do this," he said. Finally, honestly. He stopped. He was not good at this part. He had not practiced this part in 11 years because he had decided in the wreckage of his divorce that it was a part he would leave alone. "What I have with you." Another stop. "Say it," she said quietly. "Just say what it is." "I'm afraid," he said. The word sat between them. She looked at him. Something moved through her face, not the satisfaction of confirmation, but something more complicated, something that had more hurt in it than he expected. "Okay," she said. She said it slowly. "I understand being afraid. I'm afraid too." She held his gaze. "But there's afraid, and then there's making someone feel like they're standing on the outside of a window looking in. And for the last 3 weeks..." She stopped. Controlled it. "I'm not doing this to push you. I need you to understand that. I'm not asking you to be something you're not. But I also..." She looked at the table, then back at him. "I can't keep showing up to something and not know if I'm the only one who thinks it's real." "It's real," he said, immediately, without any of the hesitation that had been governing him for 3 weeks. She looked at him. "It's real," he said again. "That's the problem. It's..." He exhaled. "Lily, I have a company and a 12-year-old and a track record in this particular area that is not encouraging. And you have..." He paused. "You give everything you have to a job that takes everything you offer and then asks for more. And I don't want to be one more thing that asks for more." She was quiet for a moment. "You don't get to decide that for me," she said, softly, but completely. "I know. I have been making my own decisions about what I can handle since I was 19 years old," she said. "I have never once needed someone to protect me from my own choices." She leaned forward slightly. "So don't do that. Don't protect me. Just be honest." He looked at her. "I don't know how to let someone in," he said. The truest thing. The one he had been carrying since before she existed in his life. "I know how to be responsible for things. I know how to show up. I know how to stay. But the..." He stopped. "The opening of it. The actual opening. I don't..." He shook his head slightly. "I've been closed for a long time." The coffee shop moved around them. Someone laughed at the counter. A chair scraped. The ordinary, indifferent music of a Saturday morning. Lily reached across the table. She put her hand over his briefly. Just for a moment, the first time she had touched him, without it being an accident, and then she pulled it back. "I know," she said. "I see it. I've seen it since the first night." She looked at him evenly. "I'm not asking you to open everything at once. I'm just asking you not to shut the door while I'm standing in front of it." He looked at the table where her hand had been. "I hear you," he said. "Do you?" "Yes." She looked at him for a long moment, searching. The underneath look, finding something. Not everything she was looking for, but enough. "Okay," she said. She picked up her coffee. He picked up his. The table was the same table. The corner was the same corner. The city outside was doing what it always did, moving and unconcerned. Something had shifted. He couldn't tell yet if the shift was toward or away. He thought it was toward. He thought she thought so too, but the honest answer was that he had already done the damage of 3 careful weeks, and Lily Callahan was patient. But she was not indefinitely patient. And what she had just told him calmly, precisely without drama, was that she was paying attention to what he did next. He drove home after. He sat in the car while Marcus waited, and he looked at his phone, and he thought about what it meant to open a door. What the actual physical action of it was. What it cost. What it let in. He thought about his daughter, who was not afraid of him. He thought about a woman who read box scores to a dying man, and fought a doctor for a patient's potassium level, and stood in a blizzard refusing to fall down, and said thank you for not making me ask, like it was the most valuable thing anyone had ever offered. He thought about what it meant to drive past something. He thought about the night he didn't. "Marcus," he said. "Sir." "I need to make a stop." He bought flowers. Not because he was performing a gesture, he was not a man who performed gestures, but because he had pulled up in front of a flower shop on the way home, without fully intending to, and the window had a bucket of yellow tulips in it, and Lily had mentioned once very briefly that her mother used to grow tulips, that it was the one thing about her childhood home she missed. He had remembered. He stood at the counter of the flower shop, and a woman wrapped the tulips in paper, and he stood there holding them in his good coat in the early summer light, and he thought, this is what it looks like. This is the door. You either open it or you drive past. He drove to the hospital. He knew she was working a Saturday afternoon shift because she had mentioned it. He knew her unit. He asked at the desk for her, gave his name, and waited. She came out to the corridor 3 minutes later, still in scrubs, still carrying the particular tiredness of a long shift, not beaten, just present in her tiredness, the way she was present in everything. She saw him. She saw the tulips. Her face did something swift and complicated that she didn't have time to manage before he saw it. "Alexander," she said. "I know you're still working," he said. "I have 20 minutes," she said. "That's enough," he said. He held out the tulips. She took them. She looked at them. She looked at him. "You remembered," she said. "I remember everything you tell me," he said. "I should have been doing better with that information." She looked at the tulips in her hand. Then she looked up at him, and this time the underneath look found something it had been looking for, something she had been patient about for long enough. "You're terrifying," she said, not as criticism, as discovery. "I know," he said. "So are you." She laughed. A real one. Brief and startled and completely unguarded, the kind he had seen come out of her before, exactly twice, and both times it had done the same thing to him. Cracked something open in the center of his chest that he did not know how to close back up again, and was beginning to suspect he should stop trying. "I have to go back," she said. "I know." She held the tulips. She looked at him one more time. The wall between them was not gone. He knew that. She knew that. But the door in the wall was open, just the beginning of open, and the light coming through it was enough. "Saturday," she said. "Saturday," he said. She went back to her unit. He stood in the corridor alone for a moment. Then he turned and walked back out, and the city was doing what it always did, enormous, continuous, completely indifferent to the fact that a man who had been very effectively closed for 11 years had just quietly in the hallway of a hospital on a Saturday afternoon begun the slow and terrifying work of opening. The tulips changed something. Not everything. Not the wall which was still there, still standing still, doing the job Alexander had built it to do over 11 years of very deliberate construction. But there was a door in the wall now propped open just enough, and both of them knew it, and the knowing of it changed the texture of every interaction that followed. June settled into the city with the slow, warm confidence of a season that understood it had earned its place. The Saturday coffee continued. The texts continued. He started calling instead of texting on the nights he knew she'd had difficult shifts, which she had mentioned once very briefly. The way she mentioned things, she actually needed that she found the silence of her apartment heavy after the bad ones. He called. She answered. They talked about whatever was in front of them, Emma's ongoing campaign to convince her science teacher that marine biology deserved its own unit, the state health bill that had been amended twice since Lily's letter, the Singapore acquisition that had finally, after 4 months of board anxiety, closed. She asked questions about the acquisition that were more precise than questions most of his board members asked. He had learned to stop being surprised by this. Lily had a mind that moved fast and a habit of understanding systems, medical, political, financial, because systems affected people and people were what she paid attention to. So the subsidiary structure, she said one evening on the phone, her voice carrying the slight flatness of someone who had come home and sat down and not yet moved. If the Singapore entity fails to perform in the first 2 years, Reed Capital absorbs the liability directly. Correct, he said. And the board is comfortable with that exposure. The board is never comfortable with any exposure. That's what boards are for. He paused. Where did you learn to read acquisition structures? My dad, she said. The first time she had mentioned her father directly since the night she'd told him about becoming a nurse and then pulled back. He waited. He was an accountant, she said. Small firm, not corporate. But he brought work home, and he'd explain things while he worked. Just narrate it. Like if he talked through it out loud, it helped him think. A pause. I used to sit at the kitchen table with him. I was probably 9 or 10. I didn't understand most of it, but I liked listening to him think. Is he still in Chicago? Alexander asked. A pause. Shorter than the kind that meant she was deciding whether to answer, longer than the kind that meant the answer was simple. He died, she said. 8 years ago. Heart. He was 51. A breath. That's why I became a nurse. He was quiet. I was doing pre-med, she said. I was going to be a doctor. But when She stopped. Controlled it. When it happened, I was at school. I got there too late. And I kept thinking about who was with him in that room. Who was actually in that room with him at the end? Not the attending, not the surgeon. They had 20 other patients. It was a nurse, a woman named Patricia, who held his hand and talked to him. A pause. I switched programs the next semester. Patricia had the right equipment, he said. She laughed a small surprised sound. He had used the dead man's phrase back at her, and she had heard it. Yeah, she said, soft. Yeah, she did. He sat with it for a moment, with the image of a 9-year-old Lily at a kitchen table listening to her father think out loud about numbers, with the image of a 22-year-old Lily getting the call too late and making the decision to be always the person who was there. You've been running toward that room ever since, he said. A long pause. I never thought about it that way, she said. But yes. Your dad would be proud of you. He heard her breath change. Just slightly. The sound of something landing somewhere it hadn't expected to land. Thank you, she said. And it was the quietest she had ever sounded with him. Not guarded quiet, but the open kind, the kind that means the thing hit the real thing, the thing underneath all the competence and the push and the endless giving. He didn't say anything else. He just stayed on the line. After a moment, she said, "You're doing it again." Doing what? Being exactly the right amount of present without making it a thing. Is that a problem? It's inconvenient, she said, and he could hear the smile in it, which was its own kind of door opening. Emma met Lily properly in June. Not the coffee shop, something more deliberate, more real. It was a Sunday, and Alexander had taken Emma to the aquarium, as he had been promising since fall. The beluga whales, which Emma had declared a non-negotiable before the Singapore acquisition even closed. And Lily had a rare Sunday off, and he had asked carefully if she wanted to come. She had been quiet for a moment. "Are you sure?" she asked. Not performing reluctance, actually asking, giving him the chance to reconsider without penalty. "I'm sure," he said. "Emma's sure. Emma asked me yesterday if you were coming." A pause. "She asked?" "She asked," he confirmed, with the specific tone she uses when she has already decided the answer should be yes and is checking to make sure the adults are keeping up. "Okay," Lily said, warmly this time. The word that meant, "I trust this." They met at the entrance. Emma had a notebook. She always had a notebook, and she had prepared for the aquarium the way she prepared for everything, which was to say, with the thoroughness of a person writing a thesis rather than a child visiting an attraction. She had a list of animals she wanted to see ranked by scientific interest, with the mantis shrimp at number 1, despite the fact that the Shed Aquarium did not currently have a mantis shrimp exhibit, which Emma had lodged a formal complaint about via email. They responded, Emma told Lily as they walked in very seriously. They said they'd note the feedback. I wrote back and said I hoped that meant an actual note and not a metaphorical one. Lily looked at Emma with the expression of someone watching a force of nature. "What did they say to that?" Lily asked. "They didn't respond yet." Emma considered this. "They'll come around." Alexander walked slightly behind them as they moved through the aquarium, and he watched. He watched Emma show Lily the beluga whales, really show her with the focused enthusiasm of someone sharing something precious. And he watched Lily receive it with genuine attention, asking questions that were not polite questions but real ones. He watched Emma answer at length in the streaming, detailed way she answered questions when she believed the person across from her was actually listening. He watched Lily listen. At the jellyfish exhibit, Emma stopped in front of a large tank and went quiet. That particular quiet she went when she was thinking rather than talking. Lily stopped next to her without prompting, and the two of them stood there together, without speaking, for almost a full minute, which was notable because Emma did not usually tolerate silence unless the other person understood what it was for. Alexander stood back. "They don't have brains," Emma said finally. "Jellyfish. No brain, no heart, no blood. They've been alive on this planet for 650 million years, and they do it without a single central system." "Sounds peaceful," Lily said. Emma turned and looked at her. "That's a very different answer than I usually get. What do people usually say? That it's weird, or that they feel bad for them?" Emma looked back at the jellyfish. "I don't feel bad for them. I think they figured something out." "Maybe," Lily said, "or maybe the brain is just a way of making things more complicated than they need to be." Emma absorbed this. Then she wrote something in her notebook quickly, the way she wrote things she didn't want to lose. Alexander looked at Lily. She was still watching the jellyfish, her hands in her jacket pockets, her face in that particular state of ease that she reached when she wasn't performing anything. Not competence, not endurance, not the professional calm, just herself, just present. She turned and found him looking. She didn't look away. He didn't either. Emma, without turning around, said, "You're both being weird." "We're not doing anything," Lily said. "That's the weird part," Emma said, and turned a page in her notebook. July was the best month. Later, Alexander would be able to say that clearly. July was the best month, the one he would have kept if keeping months were a thing a person could do. They fell into a rhythm that was not named and not defined, but that had the shape and weight of something real. Lily started coming to dinner on occasional Sunday evenings, which had begun because Emma had asked her to come see the documentary she'd made for school about coral reef degradation and its applications for medical research, and had continued because the three of them at the dinner table was a thing that fit, that worked, that made the apartment feel proportionate to itself in a way it hadn't in years. He cooked. Not always ramen, he expanded. He learned over those Sundays that Lily's comfort food was her mother's Greek chicken, that she took her coffee black, that she ate quickly when she was hungry, and forgot to eat entirely when she was absorbed in something. He learned that she read the news every morning before her shift, and that she had opinions careful and well-reasoned about almost everything. He learned that she cried at movies, but was deeply embarrassed about it, and tried to do it quietly, which Emma had discovered during a film they watched one evening, and had responded to with a matter-of-fact, "It's okay, I always cry at this part too," while handing Lily a box of tissues, which had made Lily laugh and cry at the same time, and Alexander had to look at the ceiling for a moment. He also learned that she kept things, not objects, not clutter, specific things, small, precise things. A smoothed piece of glass she'd found on the lakeshore the morning after a difficult shift. A photograph of her parents on their wedding day, small enough to fit in her wallet. A note from a patient's family folded so many times, the creases had gone soft. These were her anchors, the things she touched when the world asked too much, and she did not talk about them, but he noticed them, and she noticed that he noticed, and she did not hide them. One Sunday, she arrived with a small object in her pocket that she set on his kitchen counter without comment. He looked at it. A stone. Gray, flat, oval. Lake Michigan, clearly. "New one," he said. "This morning," she said. "Early shift ended at 6. I walked to the lake." She looked at the stone. It was very quiet. "Keep it here if you want," he said. She looked at him. "I have a counter," he said. "You have a stone. It's a practical solution." She left it there. The next Sunday, she left another one. By the end of July, there were 4 stones on the corner of his kitchen counter, and his housekeeper, who cleaned on Thursdays and had never once been asked not to touch anything cleaned around them without being told. He noticed that too. August was when Catherine called. Catherine Reed. Catherine Voss. Now she had taken back her maiden name, was not a difficult person. He wanted to be clear on that, at least to himself. She was practical and intelligent and a good mother, and they had arrived at a co-parenting arrangement that functioned because they had both decided for Emma's sake that it would function. They did not have lingering animosity. What they had instead was the particular careful distance of 2 people who had tried very hard and failed at the specific thing they had tried at, and who had built a workable structure on the rubble. She called on a Wednesday evening, and Emma was at her mother's, and Alexander was in his study when his phone lit up with Catherine's name. "Emma told me about Lily," Catherine said. No preamble. Catherine never used preamble. "Hello, Catherine," he said. "I'm not calling to make anything difficult," she said. "I want you to know that first." "Okay." "Emma talks about her. Quite a bit." A pause. "She told me Lily held her hand on the jellyfish tank and didn't talk for a minute, and Emma said it was the first time she'd been to the aquarium and felt like someone actually got why she liked it." He was quiet. "I'm calling," Catherine said carefully, "because Emma asked me directly if it was okay with me if Lily was around more. She wanted to know if I minded." He let that sit. Emma had asked. He hadn't asked her to ask. She had simply being Emma, being 12 and direct, and exactly who she was, gone to her mother and navigated it herself. "What did you tell her?" he said. "I told her it was her father's decision, and her own, and that I trusted both of you." A pause. "Which I do. I trust your judgment, Alexander. That has never been the issue." He knew what the issue had been. They both knew. They did not need to name it. She's... He stopped. Tried again. Lily is a good person, Catherine. I know, Catherine said. Emma doesn't warm up like this to people who aren't. Another pause. He heard something in her voice, not hurt, not jealousy, but something more nuanced. Something like the particular grace of a person actively choosing to be bigger than their circumstances. Take care of our girl, Catherine said, and a brief stop. Don't do the thing you do. What thing? The thing where you keep someone at arm's length until they stop believing you actually want them close. Her voice was even, not accusatory, just true. You know the thing. Don't do it with this one. He was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said. Okay, she said. They hung up. He sat in his study for a while. The city moved outside his window. He thought about Catherine saying, "Don't do the thing you do," with the plain, steady accuracy of a person who had lived inside his patterns long enough to name them clearly. He thought about Lily saying, "I'm just asking you not to shut the door while I'm standing in front of it." He thought about the fact that both of these women, the one he had failed and the one he was terrified of failing, had said with different words exactly the same thing. He picked up his phone, opened Lily's contact, then he put it down. Not because he was retreating, because he needed to do the thing he was deciding to do in person. He did it wrong. That was the honest accounting again, and he knew it even while it was happening. He had thought about it clearly. He had decided. He had driven to her apartment on a Thursday evening, the first time he had been to her apartment. The studio on the north side she had never described with the small kitchen. She said she cooked in badly, and the window that faced an alley but got morning light, and she had buzzed him in. Surprised, and when she opened the door, she was in old clothes and her hair was pulled back, and there was a patient chart open on her kitchen table because she was reviewing something for a morning handoff, and she looked at him with the careful attention of someone reading a situation. "What's wrong?" she said. "Nothing's wrong," he said. "Then why are you—" "I need to say something," he said. "I've been—" He stopped. He was in her doorway, and she was holding the door, and the apartment behind her was small and warm, and had 4 plants on the windowsill, and the stone she'd told him about the wedding photo, and a stack of nursing journals beside the kitchen table, and it was entirely, essentially, Lily. All the things she had kept out of his sight, carefully arranged in the place where she actually lived. "Come in," she said. He came in. He looked at the room. She watched him look at it. "It's small," she said. Not defensively, just naming the fact. "It's yours," he said. Which was the right answer, and she knew it, and something in her expression softened. "What do you need to say?" she said. "I want to—" He stopped. Started again. The words he had organized in the car were not organizing properly. "I want more of this," he said. He gestured not the apartment specifically, but the idea of it, her, this here, all of it. "I want more than Saturday mornings and Sunday dinners. I want—" He stopped again. She was watching him, very still. "I'm not good at this," he said. "I want to be honest about that. I'm not—" He exhaled. "I don't say things well when they're about this. I can run a $12 billion acquisition. I cannot—" He looked at her. "I cannot seem to say a simple thing simply when the thing matters this much." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "Alexander," she said. "I know. Let me ask you something." She sat on the edge of the kitchen table, arms loose, not closed. "If this were a business decision, if I were a company you were considering, what would the report say?" He almost smiled. "The report would say the fundamentals are sound, the relationship has demonstrated sustained value, the risks are manageable, and continued investment is strongly recommended." "And what does the man say?" she said. Quietly. He looked at her. "The man says he hasn't felt like this since before he knew how much it could cost," he said, "and that he's been using the cost as a reason not to try, which is—" He stopped. "Which is the worst kind of cowardice for a man who makes his living on calculated risk." She was quiet. He waited. I've been here the whole time, she said, gently, but with something underneath the gentleness. You know that, right? I've been standing right here. I know. Then what? She stopped, stood up. The gentleness was still there, but the thing underneath was moving to the surface now, and he recognized it not anger, but the particular exhaustion of a person who has been patient for a long time and is reaching the edge of their patience. What has the last month been, Alexander? The last 3 weeks you've been... She put her hand flat on the table. I can feel you pulling back. I can feel it like a change in air pressure, and I keep thinking I'm imagining it, and then I stop thinking I'm imagining it. He said nothing. I'm not imagining it, she said. No, he said. You're not. So, what is it? Not a question. A demand. The first real demand she had ever made of him, and it was so plainly reasonable, so straightforwardly earned, that it landed without the quality of a confrontation. It landed as a fact. I got scared, he said. You said that before, she said. In June, you said you were afraid, and I told you I understood afraid. I told you I was afraid too. She looked at him directly. But Alexander, there's a difference between afraid and... She stopped, looked away, looked back. There's a difference between afraid and making someone feel like they're not worth the risk. The room went very quiet. He crossed the space between them. 4 steps. He stood in front of her, and she looked up at him, and he could see everything on her face, the tiredness of it, the hurt she had been managing, the dignity with which she had been managing it, and underneath all of that, still stubbornly, the thing she hadn't taken back, the thing she'd been holding there for months, waiting for him to be ready to meet. You are worth every risk, he said. He said it the way he said things when he had decided they were true. Clear, without performance, without hedging. She looked at him. Then act like it, she said. Stop thinking about the cost. Stop calculating the exit. Just... Her voice broke. Just slightly. Just enough for 1 syllable. Just be here. He reached out. He put his hand on the side of her face, and she went still, completely still, the absolute stillness of a person who has been touched at the exact place they needed to be touched. I'm here, he said. She closed her eyes. I have been making very poor use of the last 3 weeks, he said. I would like to do better. She opened her eyes. Something in them. The door, the window, all of the metaphors he had been using because he did not have better language was fully open. Not managed, not careful. Okay, she said. And then he got it wrong. He kissed her briefly, carefully, the way he did things when he was still afraid and still trying, and she kissed him back. And it was real. It was the realest thing, and then he pulled back and looked at her and said, I should go. He saw it happen on her face, the moment the door closed. Not fully, not the way it had been closed before, but something moved back, something that had just come forward, retreated, and she did it quietly with the practiced efficiency of a person who has done it before too many times before. Okay, she said. The word had a different weight than it had 30 seconds ago. I want to do this right, he said. I know. She stepped back. 1 step. Good night, Alexander. He drove home. He sat in the back of the car, and he knew with the precise certainty he applied to everything that he had just made a mistake. Not the kiss, the leaving. He had arrived at the moment and then walked away from it, and Lily, who had been patient with him longer than anyone, had a right to ask who had stood at his door and said, just be here with everything she had. Lily had felt him walk away. Marcus, he said. Sir. He was quiet for a moment. I think I just... He stopped. Marcus was quiet. After a moment, shall I turn around, sir? He thought about it. No, he said. He had learned over the years that some things needed a night, that showing up again 30 minutes later was not the same as showing up with clarity. He needed to get this right. He needed to do it in a way that left no room for her to wonder. He went home. He did not sleep. At 6 in the morning, his phone lit up with a text. Her name. His heart did what it had been doing for months, which was to say, it did not behave the way a disciplined CEO's heart was supposed to behave. He opened the text. I need some space. A pause. Then, not because I don't want this, because I do, and I need to know you do too, not when you're ready, not someday. Actually, he read it twice. He typed, I understand. Then he deleted it. Typed, I hear you. Deleted that too. He set the phone down. Picked it up. He typed, you deserve someone who doesn't need 6 months to understand what he has. I'm sorry it took me this long. He sent it before he decided not to. The check mark appeared. She had read it. No response. He put his phone face down on his desk and stood at his window and looked at the city that had given her to him on a January night in a blizzard. And he felt the particular clarifying pain of a man who has just understood with complete precision exactly what he is at risk of losing. And he understood something else. He was done being careful. He was done calculating the cost. He was done with the wall, done with the management of it, done with the equivocation and the retreating and the quiet cowardice that Catherine had named and Lily had absorbed and that he had been calling self-protection for 11 years. He had one question left. Whether he had run out of time. She didn't respond to his text. Not that day. Not the next. He gave her the space she had asked for, because it was the one thing he could do that wasn't about him, not about his timeline, his readiness, his fear. She had asked for space, and he gave it, and he did it without filling the silence with more texts, more explanations, more of the careful language he had been using for months to say almost everything, while holding back the one true thing. He waited. He was not good at waiting. He was a man who moved on decisions on problems on every variable that entered his field of vision. Stillness had always felt to him like a form of losing, but he sat with the silence Lily had asked for, and he did not move into it, and he used the time the only way he knew how to use it honestly. He thought. He thought about everything Catherine had said, and everything Lily had said, and everything Emma, who was 12, and saw more clearly than most adults he knew, had communicated in the quiet economy of her observations. He thought about a 9-year-old girl at a kitchen table listening to her father think out loud. He thought about a nurse named Patricia who held a stranger's hand at the end, and made one woman decide to spend her life being that person for everyone she could reach. He thought about 4 stones on his kitchen counter and a post-it note folded in his desk drawer that said, "Thank you. Lily C." that he had never thrown away. He thought about a January night and a woman gripping a bus stop pole in the snow, refusing to fall down, too proud to ask for help. He thought about what it meant that she had put his name in her phone as her emergency contact without telling him. That she had done it quietly, practically the way she did the things that mattered most, without announcement, without ceremony. Just the simple act of deciding that he was the person she would call if everything went wrong. She had decided that before he had even figured out what she was to him. He had been 11 years too slow, and 6 months of halfway, and 3 weeks of retreat, and she had waded through all of it with a patience that was not passivity, but choice, the active daily decision of a woman who believed that the right things were worth the hard work of waiting for them. He was done making her wait. He found her on a Saturday morning, not the coffee shop. He had tried the coffee shop first, arrived at the corner table at the regular time, ordered 2 coffees out of an optimism he knew was probably unearned, and sat for 20 minutes before accepting that she wasn't coming. He left her coffee on the table. He walked out. He stood on the sidewalk and thought. He had her address. He could go to her apartment. But showing up at her door felt like pressure, like another thing she had to manage, and she had asked for space, and he was trying to honor the spirit of it, even as he was moving to end it. He called Dana. Dana picked up on the second ring. "She's not at the hospital," Dana said before he could speak. "And before you ask, yes, she told me about Thursday. And no, I'm not going to tell you where she is." Dana. She's my best friend Alexander. I know. She cried, Dana said, not cruelly, just plainly. She doesn't cry, you know that. She called me Thursday night and she was… A pause. She tries so hard not to need things. She has her whole life. And she let herself need something with you, and then you… I know, he said. He said it without defense because there was no defense. It was true. All of it was true. Silence on the line. Dana, he said. Please. Another pause. Longer. She takes a walk on Saturday mornings when she's not working, Dana said. There's a flower market on Maxwell Street. She goes every week whether she buys anything or not. A pause. She says it helps her think. Thank you, he said. Don't make me regret it, Dana said, and hung up. He found her at the flower market at 9:40 a.m. She was standing in front of a display of sunflowers with her hands in her jacket pockets, and she was not buying anything. She was just standing there, the way she had stood at the jellyfish tank, that particular internal stillness of a person who is in the middle of a conversation with themselves. She was wearing a navy jacket, and her hair was down, and she looked like herself. Entirely herself. The most herself he had ever seen her, which was to say, she looked like a woman who was doing the quiet, unglamorous work of figuring out what she actually wanted. He walked up beside her. She heard him coming. She turned, and she saw him, and her face did the thing it always did before she could stop it, the swift, involuntary recognition that registered as something welcome, that she had never been able to fully control. He had loved that about her from the moment he first saw it. Then the control came down. Not cold, just careful. Alexander, she said. I know, he said. Give me 2 minutes. She looked at him. She didn't say no. She turned back to the sunflowers and waited, which was all he had asked for, which was also more than he deserved. He stood beside her. He looked at the sunflowers. He had not prepared a speech. He had thought about it on the drive over and decided that prepared was the wrong register. He had spent 11 years prepared. He had been prepared through every careful conversation, every managed interaction, every moment he had kept himself exactly far enough away to feel like he was still in control of something. He was done being prepared. I told you I didn't know how to open, he said. Back in June. I told you I'd been closed for a long time, and you were patient with that. You were… He stopped. You were patient with me in a way I did not earn, and did not deserve, and I repaid it by getting scared every time the door got close to open and shutting it again. He turned to look at her. She was still looking at the sunflowers. I've been treating my fear like it was a reasonable thing to keep asking you to accommodate. It isn't. It was selfish. I was protecting myself at the cost of what you were offering me, and what you were offering me was… He stopped again. He had thought this would be easier than prepared. It was not easier. It was harder in the specific way that true things are harder than organized things. You were offering me something real, and I kept almost taking it and then pulling back, and you felt every single time I pulled back, and I watched you feel it, and I did it anyway. That was wrong. I'm sorry. She was very still. I know sorry doesn't… He started. Stop, she said quietly. She turned and looked at him. Just stop for a second. He stopped. She looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were clear, not angry, not cold. Something much more complicated, the expression of a person who is deciding in real time whether the thing in front of them is worth the cost of continuing to believe in it. Do you know what it's like, she said, to spend your whole life being the one who stays, the one who shows up, the one who holds everyone else together? She looked at the flowers, looked back at him. My dad died, and I held my mother together. My mother got sick the year after, and I held that together. I work 60 hours a week holding people together who can't hold themselves, and I am… She stopped. Her voice held. She held it the way she held everything through the center, not around the edges. I am good at that. I am not complaining about that. That is who I am. Her eyes met his. But I am so tired, Alexander. I am so tired of being the person in every room who needs nothing. He didn't say anything. I let myself need something with you, she said. I let myself think. She stopped. I let myself think that maybe this was the thing where I got to be the one who was held for a minute. And then you'd pull back and I'd tell myself I was being foolish, that I was reading into things, that I was... She shook her head. I know what I felt. I wasn't reading into it. No, he said. You weren't. Then what? Her voice cracked, just slightly. What are you doing here, Alexander? What do you actually want? Because I need you to say it. Not almost say it. Not the version where you leave before the sentence is finished. I need you to actually say it. He took a breath. I want you, he said. Not on Saturday mornings, not occasionally. I want you in my life the way the stones are in my kitchen, just there, just part of it, just where you belong. He held her gaze. I want to be the person you call when it's a hard night. I want to be the person Emma calls when she needs someone who isn't her father. I want to be the thing you don't have to ask for because it's already there. He paused. I want to stop being afraid. I don't know how to stop all at once, but I know I'd rather try with you than stay closed without you. She looked at him. I'm not easy, she said, not as a warning, as information. I work too much and I take on too much and I have a hard time accepting things, and sometimes I'll pick a fight about something that isn't actually what I'm upset about. I know, he said. You're not easy either, she said. You close down when it gets hard, and you manage things instead of feeling them, and you will absolutely make decisions about what I can handle without asking me. I know, he said. I'm working on it. We'd be a disaster, she said. Probably, he said. Periodically. Something moved in her expression. The door again. He had spent months watching that door. He knew every millimeter of its movement. I'm still angry, she said. About last week. I need you to know that. I know. And I'm not just going to... She stopped, her jaw set. Her eyes were bright. I don't just fall back into things because someone shows up and says the right words. I'm not built that way. I know, he said. I'm not asking you to fall into anything. I'm asking you to let me earn it back. He paused. I'm asking for the chance to be the man you deserve, instead of the one who kept almost being him. She looked at him for a long time. He stood still. He did not press. He had said what he came to say, all of it, the real version, the unmanaged version, and now it was hers. Her decision. Her call. He had not earned the right to push. She turned back to the sunflowers. He waited. After a long moment, she reached out and picked up a single sunflower from the display. Just one tall and full, the specific yellow of a thing that turns toward light as its entire operating principle. She turned it in her hands once, then she held it out to him. He looked at her. Hold this, she said. Her voice was different now, the careful layer gone. Just her. Just Lily. Just the woman who gripped bus stop poles in snowstorms and read box scores to dying men and left stones on kitchen counters without making a production of it. He took the sunflower. She bought 3 more from the vendor, tucked them under her arm, and started walking. After one step, she glanced back at him over her shoulder, and the look said, Are you coming or not? He fell into step beside her. They walked through the flower market without speaking, past buckets of dahlias and lavender and late summer roses, and the city moved around them the way it always did, enormous and indifferent and beautiful, in the particular September light that Chicago produced, for about 3 weeks before it remembered its other personality. He walked beside her, and she walked beside him, and the silence between them was not the silence of 2 people who have nothing to say, but the silence of 2 people who are letting something settle into its real shape. After a block, she said, Emma texted me. He looked at her. When? This morning. A pause. She said, and I quote, my dad is an idiot, but he knows it, which is better than most. He closed his eyes briefly. I'm going to have a conversation with my daughter about appropriate. She also said. Lily continued, a note of something warm in her voice. The stones are still on the counter. He doesn't let Maria move them. He said nothing. You didn't let your housekeeper move my stones, Lily said. They belong there, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you know what the hardest thing has been the last few weeks? Tell me. Missing you, she said, simply. I was angry, and I needed the space, and I still missed the Saturday mornings and the phone calls and the dinners and Emma's. She stopped. I missed it, all of it. That made me more angry. I missed it too, he said. I missed you. Every day. She looked straight ahead. Good, she said. You should have. I know. They walked another half block. I want to try, she said. I want to do this. But Alexander. She stopped walking, turned to face him. If you close the door again, if you pull back again, the way you did, I won't wait the next time. I don't have another round of that in me. I need you to understand that before we... I understand, he said. I mean it. I know you mean it. He looked at her directly. And I need you to understand something in return. He shifted the sunflower in his hand. Every decision I've made in my life since I was 22 years old has been made on the basis of managing risk. Every relationship, every investment, everything. I calculate cost and probability and exit strategy before I move. He paused. I cannot do that with you. I've tried. You refuse to be a manageable variable. Something in his voice, the warm, unguarded frequency he only hit when Emma made him laugh, or when he was standing at his window at 2 a.m., having decided to stop managing something. You are the most unmanageable person I have ever met, and I mean that as a compliment of the highest order. She stared at him, then she laughed. The real one, the brief, startled, unguarded laugh that had cracked him open the first time and every time since. That's the most romantic thing you've ever said to me, she said. I have very unusual romantic instincts, he said. You really do, she said. They stood on the sidewalk of Maxwell Street with armfuls of flowers and a sunflower between them, and the September light came down on the city the way it did for those 3 weeks every year, like an apology for everything else. And Lily Callahan looked at Alexander Reed, and he looked at her, and everything that had been building since a January night on Michigan Avenue arrived finally in the place it had been heading all along. Come with me, she said. Quietly. Deliberately. He heard the echo of it. His own words 7 months ago at a bus stop in a blizzard. His gut instinct and his mother's memory and a woman who wouldn't fall down. All of it arriving back in a single phrase in her voice. Okay, he said. They were not perfect about it. That was the honest account. He closed down twice in October. Not fully. Not the wall, but the door swung almost shut twice. And both times Lily named it immediately, clearly, without drama. And both times he caught himself and came back. She worked too much in November, and he showed up at her hospital with food 3 times in 1 week, and she called him suffocating, and he said, "You're welcome," and she threw a clean dish towel at him, and they were both laughing before it hit the floor. Emma started texting Lily directly sometime in October, a development that neither adult had formally acknowledged, but both had noticed. The texts were typically about marine biology, or school politics, or the ongoing injustice of her science teacher's grading rubric. Lily always responded. Always had time. Always took Emma seriously in the specific way Emma required, which was to say completely. Catherine met Lily in November over a handoff that turned into a 20-minute conversation in Alexander's building lobby. He watched from a distance. Both women were composed, direct, and thorough. He felt obscurely like a bill being reviewed by 2 very competent committees. Catherine called him that evening and said, "She's good, Alexander." He said, "I know." Catherine said, "Don't mess it up." He said, "I'm trying." Catherine said, "Try harder." He said, "Good night, Catherine." The stones accumulated on his kitchen counter, 6 by December. He gave her a key in December. He did not make a ceremony of it. He left it on the counter next to the stones one morning before she arrived, and when she came in she picked it up and looked at it and looked at him and said nothing. She put it in her pocket. That evening he found it on her keychain next to her hospital ID and her apartment key. And he stood in her hallway looking at it for a moment and felt something he did not have exact language for, but that lived in the same register as the first time Emma had held his hand in a hospital when he was 12 years old and his mother was sick, and he had understood for the first time that love was not a feeling but a choice that some people made every single day without being asked. They got married in September, the following year. Small, the word they both used, the word that meant what they both wanted, people who had seen the whole thing from the beginning, the ones who knew what it had cost and what it was worth. Marcus was there, Dana was there, Catherine was there with her quiet dignity and her genuine smile. Lily's mother was there, small and bright-eyed, who cried from the beginning and did not stop and kept saying, "Your father would have loved him," until Lily held her hand and said, "I know, Mom, I know." Emma was there. Emma, who had started all of this in some indirect, essential way. Emma, who had seen Lily before. Alexander had finished seeing her, who had given a stranger a seat at a corner table and read to her from a documentary, and handed her tissues without making it a thing, and texted her about the injustice of grading rubrics at 10 p.m. Emma, who stood beside her father and watched Lily walk toward them and had the expression of a person whose hypothesis had been confirmed at the highest level of confidence. Afterward, when it was over and the small gathering had moved to dinner, and the long good noise of people who like each other filling a room, Emma found Alexander standing at the edge of the room and stood beside him. They both watched Lily across the room talking to her mother, laughing at something, her hand moving in the particular gesture she made when she was telling a story she found genuinely funny. "You did good, Dad," Emma said. "I almost didn't," he said. "I know." Emma glanced up at him. "But you did." He put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. She let him. Across the room, Lily caught his eye. She gave him the look, the underneath look, the one she had been giving him since the first night, the one that was still looking for the thing below the surface. But now, when it found what it was looking for, she let him see it. She didn't look away. She didn't manage it. She just looked at him and he looked at her. And 11 years of closed doors and 6 months of almost, and 1 blizzard in January, and 4 stones and a post-it note and a single sunflower on Maxwell Street added up to exactly this. A man and a woman who had done the hard work of finding each other and the harder work of staying standing on opposite sides of a warm room, knowing exactly where they were. He had stopped the car on a January night because something in a woman's posture had reminded him of his mother, and because he had made a promise to a 12-year-old version of himself, and because underneath all of the calculation and the management and the 11 years of careful distance, something in him had known the way. The gut knows things before the mind catches up. That driving past was not an option he could live with. He had been right. He had been in the end right about the one thing that mattered more than Singapore, and more than the board, and more than every acquisition he had ever made or would ever make, the decision made in 3 seconds on a cold street in a blizzard that some things were worth stopping for. And Lily Callahan, who had spent her whole life being the one who stayed, finally had someone who stayed for her. That was enough. That was everything.